Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today, I want to return to the subject of money and finances. I want to help you to magnetize money and bring it into your reality. I have dedicated many episodes to this topic, and we have discussed a number of amazing New Thought teachers and techniques that you can use to magnetize money, to find money, to keep money, to grow money. There's so much to this, and it is a very spiritual topic. I want to help you to find true wealth. It's very important to me because I believe that once you have found security and freedom, that you can obtain a greater spiritual enlightenment. The secret to the new earth is that you, who have dedicated yourself to service to others, must go about finding a way to be secure. Many people I meet are so bogged down in trying to find the next dollar that they simply do not have the time to meditate, to learn, to teach themselves, to go out and expand spiritually. And because of this, there is a limitation on what is available and what you can do. There are many that are service to self that have found their billions of dollars through a variety of secrets and ways. But it's now time for you to find the money that you need to let go of the guilt around having money. Many spiritual entities on this earth come from other planets that didn't have the same sort of economic system. The capitalist system of the earth itself can be debilitating in some cases and difficult to maneuver through. And I meet so many amazing spiritual people that are struggling to survive because they don't want to spend time worrying about money. So I continually do these episodes because it is an important stepping stone for you to transform, and that is what I want you to do. We've all heard that money is the root of all evil. This piece of folk wisdom is due, no doubt, to the fact that so many people mistakenly imagine that money is the source of all good. For when we expect too much of anything, we eventually find, as with idol worship, that the object of our dependence is not competent to answer our prayers, nor capable of fulfilling our expectations of it. So it's not the money by itself, it's the love of money that is the root of all evil. After all, money is not evil in itself, any more than dynamite is evil. Dynamite can be used constructively to build roads or destructively to demolish buildings. Money similarly can be used to do wonderful things. It is human greed that so often directs money toward evil ends. Money represents, quite simply, a flow of energy. Harm results when money is loved and hoarded for its own sake, for in hoarding it, we block the energy flow. A child once accompanied his parents on an outing to the mountains. With them, he drank cool water from a mountain stream. Loving its fresh taste, he filled a bottle from the stream and took it home with him. There he would sip only a little water each day, wanting to make it last as long as possible. What was his disappointment a few weeks later then to find that the water left in the bottle had become stagnant? Money similarly grows stagnant when we bottle it up. That is to say, hoard it. To attract and magnetize a steady money flow in our lives, we must learn to view money not as a thing merely, but as an expression of energy. Ultimately, as an expression of our energy. Check out my episode on Quo, where they discuss money as energy. And another one that comes to mind is Raymond Charles Barker's God is Money in Action. Money is the blood that flows through God, and it is the way that God helps to answer prayers With the money that you make, you can remove any mountain or build any building. Anything is possible with money. Developing money magnetism depends to a great extent on understanding how to use money properly. Using money properly depends on realizing that in acquiring money, we don't merely manipulate material forces in our favor. Still less is the acquisition of money a matter of luck. Rather, we attract money to us. The other side of that coin is that the failure to acquire money is essentially an act of repulsion on our part, unconscious to be sure. We may push it from us even while we imagine that we are doing our best to acquire it. Both of these concepts, learning how to attract money and how to put it to the proper use, depend finally on understanding what truly constitutes our needs. That is our own and others' highest good, for it is a law of life that when we waste any resource, we encounter a time finally when we can no longer replenish it. Think of the vast number of forests that have been cut without thought for replanting, of farmland that has been exhausted because its soil was never replenished. Think of the many stories of movie stars who, instead of using their money discriminately, squandered it until at last they were left penniless. What is wealth? Raymond Charles Barker says that wealth is the freedom to do what you want when you want. Most people equate it with investments, with savings, with income, with real property. Yet we've all known people who got by quite happily on very little money. I've known others, by contrast, who seemed barely able to scrape by, even though they may have earned several times as much as the first group. The strange thing is that those who get by on very little often manage to obtain more of this world's goods, to go on more vacations, and to do a great deal in other ways that others with more money never seem to be able to do. Who among these, then, was the more truly wealthy? It isn't merely a matter of how much you have, but rather how well you know how to use what you have. In the last analysis, one is as wealthy or as poor as they think themselves to be. Wealth cannot be equated with some fixed quantity. If one is wealthy in their mind or in their spirit, they may require very few material possessions to be perfectly satisfied with life. If, on the other hand, one considers themselves wealthy only for their material riches, they may be convinced they are poor even if they have $50 million. Perhaps only because some former classmate of his has 90 million. I remember a time around 2008 when an absence of income combined with the determination to change my career led to my having to live on very, very little. During those several months, I learned all sorts of tricks for living inexpensively. I sprouted alfalfa seeds. I trained my palate to enjoy powdered milk, which is much cheaper than regular milk. I took advantage of special sales at the grocery store and saved up coupons, and I concentrated on preparing cheap, high-energy foods like split pea soup, which would last for several days. No doubt one could say that I was poor then, yet I didn't feel particularly poor. I won't go so far as to say that I felt rich, but the important thing is, because I didn't dwell sadly on all the things I lacked, I really wasn't poor. I'll go farther. In every way that really mattered, I was rich. There's the charming story of the American Indian who happily farmed a meager quarter-acre plot. A wealthy neighbor of his befriended him. One day, this friend offered him 5 acres to give him more land to farm. "Thank you for the gesture," the Indian replied, "but if I had more land to work, when would I find the time for singing?" On the opposite side of the coin, I've known people with a great deal of money who could never convince themselves they were even well off. And I recall a certain friend of mine, a scientist and a professor at a university. He owned his own home, his family, and he ate well, dressed well, lived reasonably well, yet he considered himself wretched. His complaint was that he couldn't afford some of the expensive gadgetry he'd seen and enjoyed. Things like state-of-the-art television, and I recall him weeping, I'm poor, I'm poor. Wealth is the consciousness of abundance, and poverty is the consciousness of lack. Wealth and poverty are both states of mind. You are as rich or as poor as you believe yourself to be. As Neville Goddard taught us, our state is what ends up being outpictured in the reality around us. I don't want the people who listen to the podcast to think that I've lured them into this episode on how to attract or magnetize money, only to substitute it for a philosophy of self-deprivation. Money is important in this world. A person who writes books needs money to support himself while he writes. A photographer needs expensive lenses to take the best pictures. There is no field of activity in which money does not figure in some way. Nor do I suppose that I myself could have lived for very long on only $10 a month. Essentially, to my theme, however, is the importance of the right mental attitude, not only for defining the parameters of happiness intelligently, but also for attracting wealth in the first place. The purpose of this episode is to help you to attract money in such a way as not to make it a burden on your peace of mind, but a doorway rather to genuine opportunity. It is to help you to learn how to use money wisely in such a way to acquire the greatest possible benefit for yourself and others. You must really seek security within yourself first. The teachings of Jesus Christ were intended primarily for the salvation of our souls. Nevertheless, because truth remains no matter on what level of reality we seek, many of Jesus' sayings can be applied effectively even on ordinary levels of human life. For example, to him who has shall be given, and he shall have abundance, but from him who does not have, even that which he has shall be taken away. Matthew 13:12. At first glance, this may seem a very unfair teaching, no matter on what level of truth we apply it. If, however, we think of abundance as something one attracts to himself, rather than waiting for it to be doled out to him by a whimsical destiny, an uncertain blessing over which he has no control, then we can see that Jesus is addressing the issue in another spirit altogether. Quite simply, what he was emphasizing was the importance of our own responsibility in the quest for abundance. Abundance, in other words, is something we must draw to us. We must magnetize. Abundance of all kinds, for success too is a kind of abundance. So also is emotional fulfillment. So also are friends. We draw these to us. We can also repel them. A consciousness of abundance attracts abundance. It's really that simple. Though it may help to explain this principle a little further. A consciousness of poverty, on the other hand, attracts poverty. You've probably heard people speak of poverty consciousness. There is negative power in negative attitudes. Our expectations of life, whether positive or negative, determine to a great extent the wealth or poverty, the success or failure, the fulfillment or disappointment that we receive from life. An important point to consider is that we can increase or decrease the influence of these expectations by the intensity which we focus our thoughts and feelings on them. A cornerstone of the teachings of the great spiritual teacher Paramahansa Yogananda is the aphorism, "The greater the will, the greater the flow of energy." Willpower, it is that directs energy of the body and outward from the body towards any object of fulfillment. And the effectiveness of our expectations of life depends on the energy we focus upon them. A person of weak willpower will inevitably be also a person whose energy flow is weak. By contrast, a person of great willpower always finds reserves of inner energy from which they draw the ability to attain their objectives. Willingness generates energy. Unwillingness, on the other hand, depletes one's supply of energy no matter how much they try to replenish it with sufficient rest and good diet. Energy is indeed the link between mind and body, between divine consciousness and the material universe. Science has demonstrated that matter is energy, essentially. Many leading modern physicists go further and state their belief that energy is a manifestation of consciousness. In this, they concur with the ancient teachings which state that the divine will manifested the material universe through the medium of cosmic energy. When we direct our hand to raise, say, a stone, we do not merely by visualizing it as raising the stone. We also send energy to it by commanding of our will, and we direct the energy to raise the stone. Yogananda created a set of psychophysical exercises to develop a person's awareness of and control over this flow of energy in the body. I have practiced this system for several years and have found it to be enormously beneficial, not only physically, but also in its application to the principles being discussed. Even without this system of exercises, one can acquire great power to influence events that more passive people think of as beyond their control. They can exert their power by simply understanding the influence of right attitude over the flow of energy. For energy doesn't merely act upon matter through the muscles of our bodies. It exerts a magnetic force beyond our bodies to attract to us whatever we want, or just as effectively by strong negative expectations what we don't want in our lives. Energy may be compared to electricity. Indeed, electricity is a form of energy. Electricity is a lower manifestation of the same energy as that which moves the body. It is a particular manifestation of the cosmic energy which created the material universe. When electricity flows through a wire, it generates a magnetic field. The stronger the flow, the more powerful this field. Similarly, whenever we will something to happen or to be drawn to us, a ray of energy goes out, projected by the power of our thought or will. The energy in turn generates a magnetic force field. It is this magnetic force that attracts us to the objects of our expectations. Thus, to attract money, we must be confident that we have a right to our fair share of the abundance of the universe. And indeed, we have that right, all of us. Don't be passive in the demands you make on the universe. Don't wait for good fortune to smile on you. Be secure in yourself and know that you yourself are an integral part of the cosmic reality. When you have that consciousness of living already in abundance, then as Jesus said, you will attract more abundance. One thing that's important to understand is not to limit what it is that you want. There's a story I'm reminded of a man who died, was being shown around heaven by St. Peter. They came to what St. Peter called the heavenly junkyard. Here you'll find all the gifts from heaven, he explained, that people on earth rejected. Why, that's impossible, exclaimed the newcomer. Some of these things are beautiful. Look at the Cadillac over there. Who could possibly have rejected that? Well, it's interesting that you should ask about that particular car, replied St. Peter. As it happens, the person who rejected that Cadillac is you. Impossible, protested the other. I'd never refuse such a wonderful gift. All the same, it was you. You see, the Cadillac was ready and waiting to be delivered to you, but every time you prayed for a car, you kept visualizing a little Volkswagen. Most of the books I know that teach people how to actualize their ideas stress the importance of visualizing clearly the exact description, complete to size and shape of the tiny thing they want. Do they want a car? Then see the exact model car they want, its color, its shape, visualize it sitting in their garage, perhaps even with the keys in the ignition. The point of this story then is that it is not possible to anticipate in advance all the opportunities life holds in store for us. By demanding one specific opening, we may inadvertently fail to notice another. We've already described money as an energy flow. A flow of any kind is incompatible with rigidity, whether of ideas or of behavior. Dogmatic thinking is brittle thinking. Preconceived notions of how things ought to work may serve us well as long as everything depends and develops along predictable lines. But they betray us whenever we find ourselves confronted with new challenges. A skier will fall if, on finding himself suddenly needing to make a right turn, he finds himself already committed to turning left. In an energy flow, one doesn't think of fixed stopping points. One thinks of continuous movement beyond the known and visible to the unknown and invisible. One thinks not of fixed goals, but of continuous progress, continuous expansion toward ends that are lost in infinity. In my life, I've often had to put this principle to use. Rarely have I found it helpful to have too specifically in mind some physical thing that I wanted. What I visualized rather was the direction I needed to move. Clarity was indeed necessary, but it was necessary for me not to bind clarity in bonds that were too material. I have found this particularly in finding love, that I found greater success by imagining the feeling of love and moving into a loving state without imagining the exact person that I wanted to be with. Had I wanted a car then, I would have done what I have done, visualized clearly the service a car would give me rather than the specific vehicle itself. For the principles that we are discussing, a non-material principle, they are predicated on the fact that matter itself is only energy, and on the further concept that energy itself is only a manifestation of consciousness. There have been a few times when I needed specific sums of money. At such times, naturally, I visualized the particular sum needed. However, even then, I didn't visualize the money sitting there in a pile, green $100 bills on my desk, just waiting to be counted. Rather, I visualized the particular purpose this money was meant to serve. I concentrated on the energy flow of which money was a part rather than on the money as a separate reality in itself. The community I used to live in held a rally during which everyone was asked to pledge varying amounts to beautify the downtown area. They were asked to donate specific projects, 100 for a tree, 25 for flowers, and so on. One of the donations requested was $2,000 to improve the road. Looking at that sum, I thought, no one will pledge such a large sum. As it happened, I myself didn't have any money for such a project, but I thought, the roads do need improvement, so let me pledge that amount. I had no idea where the money would come from. Beyond putting my pledge in an envelope, I said nothing about it to anyone. The payment on it was due in 2 weeks. A week later, I still had no money. Where the money would come from, I awoke one morning to find an envelope under my door. It contained a letter from a friend I hadn't seen in a long time who wrote, I was just visiting here. My mother died a few months ago, and I had been wanting to give you something in her name and in gratitude for help that you have given me through the years. Along with this letter was a check for $2,000. If this sort of thing happened only once, you'd chalk it up to coincidence, but I've seen it happen again and again to the point where coincidence simply has to be ruled out. Some definite principle is at work. This very episode indeed is an attempt to present principles that I've tested for many years and proved. Be flexible in your expectations. Otherwise, you may find, even in the realization of your expectations, that what you attract isn't really what you needed, or else turns out to be much less than what you could have had. Be directional in your expectations. Don't think of fixed goals, but rather think in terms of directional development. And as I said earlier, put energy into your creative visualization. Energy itself flows more forcefully when you think of it as a flow without fixed and definite goals. You have to understand that you're not alone on an island by yourself. You are a part of a greater reality. If you remove the strings from a guitar and stretch them between two sticks, then tried to pluck them, you'd only get a very thin sound. Their tonal richness when plucked on a guitar is due to the guitar's sounding board, which augments their sound. The same is true for the human ego. If we think of ourselves as solitary islands in a vast and disinterested ocean, we find ourselves threatened by life, not sustained by it. We may feel that we must claw and scratch our way up any hill of difficulties that we face, and shout ourselves hoarse in the face of massive indifference to achieve even the least goals for ourselves. Thus, people by the time they're 40 are often a spent force, already psychologically exhausted, depleted in energy, ill much of the time, and cynical about their chances for future success, all because they've stretched their egos between two fixed points, say their home and their job, rather than affixing them in greater awareness to the vastness of life and of the universe. Their interests are narrowly focused on I, my, me, and mine. They think in terms only of what they can get from life and how they can serve the self, not of what they can share with life and with others in the great adventure of existence. If all this seems too vague for clear understanding, let's pin it to a specific example. Someone who goes through life thinking only of his own interests is far less likely to attract help from others. than one who tries to involve others in his interests. Someone who tries to involve others only in his own interest is less likely to interest them than one who shows an interest also in what interests them. And one who approaches projects only from a standpoint of selfish interest, whether his own or other people's, is less likely to stir a sense of dedication either in himself or in them than one who appeals to high principles and ideals. The broader our vision, the more powerful it will be. I had a little demonstration of this years ago. There was a Pearl Jam concert, and I was very excited to go. I didn't have a ticket, but I thought I could find one, so I arrived at the concert where it was to be held, only to find that the doors were closed and nobody had any tickets available. I had tried to find it everywhere, so I didn't know. Dismayed to find this, in danger of not being able to go to the concert, I said, "It's my birthday," to the person at the gate, and the official looked deeply with me and said, "All right, come on in, happy birthday." It's a small example, but it illustrates how often when we take broader issues into account, we can open doors that are closed to us as long as we concentrate only on our narrow intentions. You may have read the book or seen the movie The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. On the surface, it's an attractive philosophy. One man standing firm in his convictions, loyal to his ideals, alone against the crowd. But as stated, this philosophy does not work. Yes, we must be true to our ideals. Implicit here, however, is the concept of ideals as something greater than we are. Truth itself is infinitely greater than we are. If truth is the sounding board with which our whole being resonates, then what does it matter if all men rise up against us? What indeed is the entire human race but a swarm of ants before the immensity of truth, timeless, infinite? Great men and women who lived by high principles gained far greater power from their attunement with them than they'd ever have gained by compromise with the mere opinions and interests of others. What made the Fountainhead so fragile a statement was that its hero, the fearless architect, thought only in terms of his own opinions about architecture, of his own personal desires and fulfillment. A truth must be perceived, it cannot be created. Opinions are altogether different from perception, and desires that exclude the welfare of others are selfish, and therefore by definition, small in scope. Ayn Rand's philosophy never rose above the level of egoism, my opinion and desires firmly stated against spineless compromise with the opinions and desires of others. Now, you should write this down. The power to attract money and success of every kind increases in direct proportion to our ability to recognize and attune ourselves to a greater reality than just our own, to a greater level of service than just our own self. When you see someone with great wealth, and we may think, many do, that they own it at the cost of other people's prosperity. One of the assumptions in modern social thought is that there is just so much money to go around. It's limited. If one person has more of it, others must necessarily have less. This line of thinking is typical of the materialistic consciousness by which mankind was until recently ruled, but out of which the human race is now emerging into the new earth. If we think of matter as the fundamental reality, we live perforce in a world of rigid limitations. Inevitably then we see supply of any kind as a fixed quantity, whether it be money or energy or opportunity. If, however, we think of consciousness as the reality that underlies everything, then we see quantity itself as circumscribed by nothing but the limitations of our own thinking. In fact, as is well known, wealth is something we create. It is not merely there, waiting for us to find it and lay claim to it. Thus, we see that it is only that we attract money to us. We attract energy, which then manifests itself in the form of money. And the supply of energy is cosmic in scope. Wealth isn't produced out of the ground or out of a factory. It is produced out of the cosmic ground of being, out of the infinite factory of ideas. In this episode, I haven't even addressed one of the issues that one commonly encounters on how to grow rich, namely to concentrate on making money the way an artist concentrates on creating paintings, to turn money-making, in other words, into a virtual art form. Nor have I paid the usual attention to the accumulation of wealth. The thing is, such an emphasis, though it is indeed a means of acquiring and keeping wealth, is ultimately self-defeating. For one thing, as I pointed out earlier, wealth is much more than money. It is happiness, peace of mind, the richness of fulfilling relationships, a simple and uncluttered life, wisdom, love. To devote too much energy to the quest for money may make one filthy rich, but it won't make one wealthy in the truest sense. For another thing, the excessive accumulation of money deadens one's consciousness of it as energy and heightens one's awareness of it as a fixed material reality, limited in quantity no matter how much one accumulates, and therefore ever in danger of being depleted, stolen, or lost in a market crash. The simple fact is that the more people have, usually the more fearful they become of losing what they have. They accumulate money to gain a sense of security and very often feel less secure in its very possession than they did when they had so little that attachment to what they had was not yet a temptation. The best course where money is concerned is to seek to attract as much of it as one needs, but not to try to become a multimillionaire. The strain isn't worth it. Without balance in everything, including our search for material prosperity, we quickly reach a point of diminishing returns. You can do it. You can attract it. There is a reality where you become a millionaire. You have to look at everything that is a part of that. As long as we have the consciousness of hoarding, of taking for ourselves and never allowing the energy to flow through us to others, we block that energy flow. In time, it may cease altogether. A spring that is left unused will eventually cease flowing. The same is true of our spirituality. One who doesn't use his energy creatively finds it flowing in a diminishing proportions and gradually dying. This is what Jesus meant when he said that the person who buried his talent in the ground instead of using it displeased his employer. The moral: if we hoard for ourselves instead of allowing the energy within us to flow outward, we displease the God deep within ourselves. In conversation once with a very rich relative of mine, I remarked how strange it seemed to me that people would spend all their money on themselves. I wasn't thinking of my relative's wealth at the time and had no ulterior motive in saying what I did. Our discussion had simply touched on an expensive house that we'd seen described in the paper. But his reply astonished me. "Well," he exclaimed, "that's a novel thought." The contrast between our two totally opposite attitudes and the surprise occasioned both of us highlighted for me the extent of the difference between the laws of the Spirit and those of the world. A person who receives from God the blessing of great wealth, but spends it only on himself, will sooner or later find his wealth being removed from him or its supply drying up. Whatever we are giving in this world, whether money, popularity, or talent, should be taken as an opportunity for service. We were not put here on earth merely to live for ourselves. We were given the blessing of a human body that we might enter into a greater awareness of all life. Materialistic people often think not only of matter, but of energy too, as a limited quantity. The truth is, however, that the more you use your energy, the more you'll find that you generate energy. So many people think, "But I've got to save my strength." They are wrong. Yes, of course we need rest periodically. Yes, of course we mustn't overdo. We'd be foolish to drive ourselves to the point where our willpower shuts off, for with unwillingness our energy supply shuts off too. But remember, energy used joyfully and willingly does not exhaust energy. It generates more energy. If you want to earn money, approach it as a focal point for your energy flow and use it to help you generate a greater flow of energy. Remember, money is only a symbol of energy. Approach it as energy, and remember the principle: the greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. There need be no limits to your flow of abundance. The only limits will be those who you place on that flow yourself by the self-erected fence of emotional attachment. Once you learn how to use money rightly, you will find gains on many levels. Your abundance, energy, joy, all will expand. The law of attraction is more accurately a law of magnetism. You are making yourself magnetic to the experiences that you wish to have. You live in a world filled with infinite possibilities. Those possibilities are constantly available to you. The baggage, static, habits, and fears that currently occupy your attention block you from experiencing those possibilities. Clearing the blocks make you magnetic to the new experience you desire. Attempting to attract new things without clearing these blocks can be very frustrating. When you decide that you want something new in your life, people, places, experiences, or things, you are relating to that desire from 4 levels: conscious, subconscious, unconscious, and soul. At the conscious level, you're aware of your desire for something new. At the subconscious level, you're aware of thoughts and feelings that are affecting you as you experience your desire for something new. Examples include, I can't afford it. What will people think? Do I deserve it? I've never managed to have life I want. No one believes in me. At the unconscious level, you're not affected by thoughts and feelings that you're not aware of. A common example of this is the trauma that you've forgotten or blocked out. This often presents as you're acting habitually in a self-sabotaging way without knowing why. At the soul level, you're affected by the plan you made to have certain experiences during this lifetime that facilitate soul growth. This plan was made by you, according to Quo, before you were born. You may be wondering how you can work with the soul and unconscious levels if you have no conscious awareness of them. The way you do this is to move things up the levels. As more and more of your subconscious experiences become conscious, it allows your unconscious experiences and soul level plans to move into your subconscious. Your goal is to have all experiences experienced as consciously as possible, which allows for the fewest blocks between you and your desires. Let's look at an example. Let's say that you have a job interview scheduled. You tell yourself, I'm going to have a great interview. I'm going to have a great interview. I'm going to have a great interview. You're seeing the great interview as something outside of yourself that are pulling in, attracting. In reality, it's your preferred outcome of many possibilities that are available. Your actual experience is being affected by far more than just what you're saying to yourself. Consciously, you're hoping you'll have a great interview. Subconsciously, something very different is going on. Subconsciously, it is likely that you have a great deal of fear and anxiety about how the interview might go. In essence, you're giving yourself 2 very different messages. This crosstalk generates energetic confusion in you. We don't need to explore the unconscious and soul level issues to see that there is something needing to be corrected. Conscious awareness of the subconscious experiences you are having clears this energetic confusion. Rather than focus on, I'm going to have a great interview, allow yourself to explore what you are actually experiencing. When you're not in resistance to what is, you're able to move more and more experiences into the conscious level. Each time you move something up to the conscious level, it becomes an asset for you to use across your life. Now, going back to the interview, if you simply repeat, I'm going to have a great interview, but don't address the underlying truth about it, i.e., I'm really nervous about this interview, then your subconscious nervousness will be magnetizing right alongside the conscious desire. This becomes a sort of competition, which will show up. Your conscious desire or your subconscious fear. It's impossible to say which will be louder in you at any moment. What I can say is that if you process your nervousness consciously, then both truths are working for you. It's just like 2 horses pulling a wagon. The wagon moves best when the horses are pulling in the same direction. My truth is that I want to have a great interview, and I'm also nervous about this interview. You're not resisting the truth of your nervousness. You're being conscious about the fact of it. This simple change of perspective can make all the difference in the world. Now that your nervousness is on the table, you free yourself from needing to avoid thinking about it. You may be wondering, how can acknowledging my nervousness be a good thing? Won't that just make me more uncomfortable? Ignoring the nervousness is clearly a liability. Every time you feel nervous, you have to remind yourself to ignore it. Doing this over and over is an exhausting process. By owning I am nervous, you allow yourself to see what changes you may have available. Now, when we say I am, I know that we're acknowledging something, and so if I say I am scared, then that may be creating it. What I recommend is acknowledging it by saying, I am blocking this money from a trauma that I have. I overcome this. I'm becoming more and more able to overcome the traumas and limitations that have existed in the past. Hiding from the subconscious issues results in continuing to ask for your attention. Becoming conscious of your subconscious issues allows you to make choices about how you interact with them, learn more about yourself, and grow. So what I'm saying is, oftentimes I meet people that are struggling with money, and they will say affirmations, but they do not acknowledge the underlying problem. The underlying problem is they were taught as children that money is evil, or they were taught that it's very difficult to make money, or that it's too hard to make money. So I acknowledge that my teachings from the past show that it's hard to make money, and I overcome that by acknowledging and bringing them up. This is a little bit different for everybody, and I suggest that you don't lock it in as a belief system, but you acknowledge it. So there's different ways to go about it. Acknowledge the limitations that you have and vow to release these limitations. Then you'll be pulling yourself towards that future reality that you want. Here's a fun thing that you can try. Get yourself whatever denomination of money that you feel comfortable with. 1s, 5s, 20s, 50s, whatever your equivalent currency is. Pick out whichever one of those feels comfortable to you and put it someplace in your house where you spend a lot of time. On your dresser, on the kitchen counter, the bathroom sink. Don't just stick it on the refrigerator. Pick a place where you have to interact with it, where you have to move the money around when you use that space. Pick it up, move it when you're dusting. Pick it up and move it when you have to make dinner. Pick it up and move it when you have to brush your teeth or wash your face. Is money dirty? Is it nasty? Are you afraid to have it on your kitchen counter with your food? Do you let it get dusty? Do you throw your dirty underwear on top of the dresser? Has it fallen on the floor and you don't care? Did it get in the sink and get wet? How did you treat it? How did you feel about it? What did it bring up in you? This tool will reveal to you how you actually feel about money. It will give you insight. You might want to start off with like $5 and work your way up. You might be precious with 100, but not so precious with 5. Experiment. Let yourself see what happens as you interact with your currency. How do you really feel about it? If you feel like I don't have enough, dig a little deeper. I don't have enough is a cop-out at this point, especially in this exercise, because there's more to learn. You've learned that over and over and over again. It would be like taking the same class every single day of your life. You've learned that you believe you don't have enough. Some of you are going to say, ugh, I don't want that dirty money on my kitchen counter. Or if I leave a $100 bill on the counter, someone's going to take it. That's good to know. Or I'm ashamed of having a $100 bill. I'm ashamed that I have $100. I can't just leave it around. Okay, it might be helpful to write down what you realize. Your response to this exercise is important. Start off with this. On this date, I had a $5 bill on the kitchen counter, and this is how I related to it. And this is how I felt and how I experienced it. Then after a day or 2 or 10, ask yourself, okay, what do I feel about it now? Then get yourself a shiny new $10 bill or a ripped up $10, whatever. Put that on the counter and see what happens. A lot of times just learning what you feel about money will stop it from controlling you. Another exercise is to carry a large amount of money in your pocket and see how it makes you feel. Put $2,000 in your pocket. Just walk around and see how you feel. Do you feel uncomfortable? Does it feel wrong? Are you concerned? Are you worried you're going to lose it? Is it easy to have that money in your pocket? A lot of times, learning what you feel about money will stop it from controlling you, and you can become more magnetic to it. Using an example of the money on the counter, you pass it 3 days in a row, and every time you look at it, you think it's germy and other people's hands have touched it. I hope you can see how that equal sign makes it really hard to attract money into your life. Perhaps every time you walk past a $100 bill, you find yourself thinking, look at me, I'm stuck up so-and-so because I have a $100 bill just laying around when it could be feeding somebody tonight. Wow. Now, you know that having a $100 laying around leaves you feeling like you're a bad person. That's good to know. That energetic makes it really hard to have more abundance than you determine you deserve in any moment, and you can result in you only being able to pay your bills at the last possible moment in order to continue to feel like a good person. What we've seen happen with this is that people say, I didn't know I felt that way. Once they realize how they feel, they can make decisions about how to interact with that habit. Oftentimes you'll discover that an authority figure from your past told you how you should feel about money, and it's not necessarily your opinion. Discovering that can be very eye-opening and a very powerful way to release. I've gotten another comment from several people that have emailed me as a question. They ask, how can I stop wasting money on people or projects that are bottomless pits? I'm wasting it. But I need to find a good cause. So what is a good cause? Are you giving from your abundance, or are you giving from your guilt? Are you giving because somebody in authority told you that you should? Where are you giving from? And how do you avoid all those things? You got to make sure that you are giving is something you can give and not miss. Can I give this and not miss it? Can I give and not miss this money? Sometimes people really fall for the idea that it's appropriate to be of service to others without being of support to themselves first, and we've never seen that work out well. You give support to yourself, and then you give from your abundance, whether it's time, energy, money, underwear, whatever it is. You give it from your abundance, and then that's a true gift. If you give from the sort of, I might have extra this month, but who knows what's going to happen after that? And oh God, I remember being really poor, and it scares me to think about, but I'm poor now, so I should probably give you money right now because, oh God, I feel guilty for not being poor anymore. You can see how this just doesn't go well. Another tool to help you visualize is candle wax. You can share your flame, your emanation, but you cannot give away your wax. Never, never, never. If you give away your wax, you give yourself away, and who you are is diminished. If you're a candle, you can light numerous other candles with your flame, but nobody gets your wax. On some level, we see how energetically very drained because your wax has not been precious to you. That core amount of attention, of rest, of nourishment, of peace, of quiet, of meditation, of walking, dancing, whatever it is that you know feeds you as a person and keeps you whole. Been letting pieces of those things to go to other people because you thought, well, if they're happy, I'll be happy. Or if they're happy, at least I won't be so distracted by their needs. When the truth is, you've gotten yourself drained, and you'll get further drained. So step back and set boundaries. Boundaries don't mean I don't love you anymore. Boundaries mean I have to love myself first so I have extra love to give. I can't give from this place. I have to give from a whole place. The first step is to set boundaries so that people you're giving your wax to don't get any more. And they usually throw fits, so you don't have to deal with that. They'll call you selfish, typically, or they'll call you other terrible bad words. When you drop service mentality and take care of yourself first, don't feel guilty about that. You're able to offer something extraordinary. You can still offer your flame. It's the candle. The candle is lit and the flame is giving off light. It gives off light whether you hide it in a closet or you set it on a windowsill. And when you love yourself well, it's like putting the candle on the windowsill so the people who are driving by see the light as well. You can give your flame to anyone because it still burns even when you share it with others. But when you start giving your wax away, it's all over. So I have one mantra that I want you to repeat. I'm not mentioning the large sums of money mantra because that's a whole other episode. Check out my entering into large sums of money mindset. And that is the best affirmation I've ever used. But for purposes of this episode, I want you to just say, I am in financial flow and money comes to me in infinite ways. This is so important. Money comes to me in infinite ways. When you have a belief that the only way money comes to you is if you get a paycheck, that's the way money is going to come to you. If you find a quarter on the ground or 10 cents in the laundry or a dollar blowing past you in the breeze, don't take that as something small. Grab a hold of it and acknowledge that money just came to you in an infinite way so that you'll start opening up pathways, the energetic pathways for money to flow to you in unexpected ways. You can say with me, I am in financial flow and money comes to me in infinite ways. And then see what you add on to that, because You hear not, it doesn't, it won't, it still can't pay my bills being added onto the sentence. You have to really watch that. I am in financial flow and money comes to me in infinite ways. Period. Full stop. And then you see what wants to come up in you. Then you say, I'm tempted to think that it's a lie. Or I'm tempted to believe that it hasn't happened. Or I'm tempted to believe that it doesn't happen to anybody like me. Vocalize the resistance that comes up when you say that affirmation. Now, as you have analyzed the blocks that are coming up, and as you started to understand, I want you to magnetize your money vision. It's 3 simple steps. You follow these steps, you will find success. Now, first of all, hold a vision of what it might be like to be prosperous. Secondly, feel genuine excitement about living your financial dreams come true. And third, take active physical action to help make your dream a reality. Involving your heart and your head and your guts together in alignment as equal participants in this way makes a huge difference. It is easy to see someone who's misaligned, chasing after something his or her heart is obviously not fully into, yet sometimes we fool ourselves. The key to success in energizing money starts, therefore, with more fully knowing ourselves. Having good alignment between what we think we want, what we emotionally feel involved with, and what we're willing to do gives us a clear sense of what we can believe will be possible. When we know in our heads, hearts, and guts that we are 100% fully intellectually focused, emotionally dedicated, and physically committed to our dreams, we will achieve them. Now, the other things that I would also recommend in magnetizing money, from what we've talked about in terms of energy, is concentration. Concentration is like focusing a diffused beams of light in a single laser ray. Concentration is power. When we can focus the mind pointedly, we are already far on the way to developing a powerful will. The power of will, in fact, lies less in what a person thinks than in what he wants to make happen. Concentrate on your prosperity with inner calmness, without distraction. Concentrate on it. Crystal clarity and concentration seems to be the key. So concentrate on wealth. I don't hear enough discussion of concentration. It's easy to get distracted in this day and age with our phones and televisions and all the stuff that we have to do. Shutting out the mind of all distracting thoughts and impressions. Just focusing and developing concentration on the wealth that you want to create. Focusing positively on one thing at a time. Become absorbed in that thought. Wonderful things will start to happen. Concentration seems to be a powerful way to increase energy. So if you concentrate on money, good things will come to you. So concentrate. This will magnetize the money that you need. So using your concentration, you'll hold a vision of what it might be like to be prosperous. And you concentrate on that vision. Be honest with yourself about how real it is and how much you're concentrating. Concentrate on it. Then, once you have concentrated on your vision, you feel a genuine excitement about living your financial dreams come true, and you concentrate on that. And then you take action, physical action, to make your dream a reality. Other ways to magnetize money are affirmations. The use of affirmation is one tried and true method for growing money, and it is a relatively simple yet highly effective way to help yourself overcome your own unique areas of fears and doubts by creating statements designed to positively override the nagging doubts that otherwise can run roughshod over your hopes and dreams for financial success. Knowing how some of our inner self-talk can effectively flatten our hopes and dreams, canceling out the energy wave required to bring new creations to life. We can overcome the internal negativity by creating personalized affirmations that uniquely address our own particular weak areas. My go-to affirmation is that I am so happy and grateful now. Large sums of money come to me easily and quickly in increasing quantities from multiple sources on a continuous basis in the best interest of all, with the free will of all, that I get to keep, give, spend, invest, and circulate joyfully. This covers a variety of different issues in the ways that I receive money, in the way I spend it, in the way it comes to me. But there are hundreds of wonderful affirmations, and I have tried to use them all. I have several sleep meditations and other meditations where I've used these affirmations, and I recommend that you try them out and find your own. The key is to find your own. Another thing that you can use is Feng Shui. With Feng Shui, the ancient Chinese system of attending to energies in physical spaces, start by selecting a representative symbol for your prosperity and financial success and place this picture, statue, piece of artwork, or other beautiful and personally meaningful symbol, usually in the southeast corner of a room, acknowledging that your future prosperity is assured. In such visual fashion, provides your subconscious mind with a powerful daily reminder that all is well with your finances. I've created several magical sigils through art that have helped me to enhance my own prosperity that you can also use at www.newearth.art. Another thing that is great is a gratitude prosperity journal, keeping a journal of what you're grateful for each month, what you're dreaming and daydreaming about, including places you'd like to go, people you'd like to meet, things you'd like to do, is a great way to establish a strong connection between what matters most to you and what is happening in your life. I've had fabulous success with such journals, finding that everything I write down comes true as I feel better and better about moving forward to help make my dreams come true. It's effortless, it's easy, it's wonderful. In this episode, I've done my best to present a number of ways that you can magnetize money, to understand that money is energy, and how to overcome blocks in the way you think about money, the way you interact with money, and the way that money comes to you. I'm going to concentrate with my mind and the energy of my mind and see that everybody that's listening to this episode finds prosperity in a wonderful, powerful way to free you to move along your spiritual journey to a greater level of consciousness, so that you can be of greater service to all. I really believe that. You got to take care of yourself, and that's what I'm trying to do with this. I'm not advocating any level of evil or unhealthy focus on money. I'm advocating for you to find your wealth, because with more wealth, you can be of greater service, and you can do this. And I believe in you, and it's going to happen. I can't wait to see how wealthy that you become. Please share in the comments. If you are wanting to imagine some level of wealth, I want you to talk about it in the comments. Let me help to imagine for you, and I ask all the people that are listening to do the same. If somebody's imagining a new mansion, a new car, or whatever it is, let me imagine that for you too. Don't just give me an exact dollar amount. This time I want you to tell me about your prosperity, what house you wake up in, what is happening in your life, and give me a scenario so that I can imagine it. And I ask everybody listening to do the same, to focus on the prosperity of the other people listening in the comments. Just take a moment now that you're done. Scroll down to the comments on this video. And then if you see anybody saying, I see this for myself, I'm going to see it for you too. Because I see prosperity for you, and I cannot wait for you to be free, to do whatever you want, whenever you want. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. Now available at newearth.art. Powerful fourth density technologies, art magic, sigils, images designed to magnetize and broadcast specific energies and intentions. You can access these images to help you find true prosperity, large sums of money, true love, radiant health and spiritual enlightenment, with unique portals into the new earth. These images are available for you. You can acquire prints of any image. You can acquire magnets, mugs, iPhone cases, t-shirts, hoodies, greeting cards, coasters, and several different gallery wraps and styles of canvas. You can also get these images in a variety of different sizes and dimensions. You can purchase these in a variety of different ways, and they are here to enable you to transform your life. You can go to wall previews and look at these images, and you can check them out with different dimensions. In many cases, you can get images up to 72 inches for any of these images. They are designed as unique technologies for you to look into, infused with magical light at www.newearth.art. Welcome to the reality revolution.